Welcome back to the Change the Culture podcast, educating on the importance of empowerment self-defense. I'm Annie Orenstein, your host of the Change the Culture podcast and producer of MyPwr Casts. MyPwr is a social tech startup dedicated to reducing and preventing interpersonal violence through technology, education, and community. The MyPwr App is currently in its beta phase, available now for download on Android and iOS. This incredible app is soon to be in the hands of millions of people worldwide. And today on the show, we have Tom Rose. Tom Rose is Executive Director of Impact Personal Safety, Global, Colorado, and Southern California. He has more than 30 years of leadership and management experience with organizations helping at-risk, underserved, and vulnerable populations. Over the years, Tom has observed vulnerable people being victimized without training to avoid violence. Thank you so much to Tom. Welcome to the show. We are going to be speaking about Tom's journey to empowerment self-defense, his directorship of Impact Personal Safety, and his monthly program Office Hours with Tom Rose. We will also be talking about Tom's vision of scaling ESD around the world. And of course, Tom will share with us his impressions of the new and improving MyPwr App. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It was great meeting you last week at the El Halev MyPwr headquarters / MyPwr headquarters. Let's just jump in and maybe you can share with our listeners how empowerment self-defense has made your life better. Where were you when you first discovered empowerment self-defense? And how did it become your life's work?
Great, sure. Thanks for having me. I started in a career 35 years ago that spanned most of the human services that, throughout the world, like mental health services and programs for foster children and youth, along with working directly with victims of sexual violence and as a director of a rape crisis center in Boulder, Colorado. So the culmination of a lot of experiences, I think, led me to working in empowerment self-defense. 3 years ago, I was looking for a new job, a new tribe, a new agenda that could culminate all, or I guess bring together all of my experiences in an effective way. And I found Impact Personal Safety Colorado at that time, and thought it was a wonderful mission, and immediately joined just part-time at that time. And that position grew into doing some consulting and strategic planning with Southern California, all the way up to working then globally with Impact Personal Safety Global. And so I think that the main attraction for me to the work is my observation of the vulnerable populations being victimized at every step of the way. Whether that's a lack of an ally, whether that's the lack of having anyone being advocating for them, or the ability to set clear boundaries and defend themselves when they're either being bullied or suffering from some form of violence. So that's how I arrived at where I am now in Jerusalem at El Halev recording, and have been working in Europe for the last month or so directly. And we'll get to that part of the conversation.
Amazing. You do a lot all across the board, not only for Impact Personal Safety from Colorado and Southern California, but also you're here now on a trip training teachers around Europe. It's taken you around the world. This is what ESD is. It's an empowerment self-defense. It's a movement. It's a world movement, a global movement. And we're going to talk about how you've been impactful in scaling and helping ESD scale up. So what's your dream for that? What's it like training teachers around the world?
Well, it's very exciting and very rewarding. I want to clarify and make sure that my role is defined as I do mostly business development and all of the infrastructure and back office types of things. So I don't do the actual training. We leave that to our founder, Lisa Gata, and Jennifer Bunting and Don Hart and the rest of our instructor trainers. But I set the stage. So my most recent trip in Europe, I traveled to Bucharest, Romania, and then on to Tirana, Albania, Madrid, Spain, and Barcelona before coming to Jerusalem. The main activities is outreach and business development, and that is defined by face-to-face meetings with people who might be interested in our programs. That can range from the UN Women programs, the Red Cross, for example, American International Schools we've met with, and all of those organizations serve different groups. For example, right now, the UN programs are serving women and certainly the prevention of gender-based violence. But in Bucharest, we also met with people from Ukraine who were serving children and their moms who were refugees from the Russian-Ukraine war. And so this can expand to journalists and other groups. So we look for people who might be a match for our type of service. It's not the traditional self-defense like martial arts. We're also trauma-informed, and we serve all people, ages, all physical abilities. And so that makes us unique. The other unique part of it is that we provide padded instructors, which allows for full contact fighting. Of course, our motto is a fight not had is a fight won. But sometimes you do have to fight for your life. And so we teach people to use their intuition and use their awareness to avoid violence, to set strong boundaries if they're in a confrontation and try to de-escalate the situation. And then if necessary, fight. But to fight, you have to get through the freeze response or the adrenaline response that your brain sometimes goes through and makes it you unable. So the training that Impact provides tries to help you through a 16-hour course of layering that gets you through that freeze response. I took the course 2 years ago. It transformed my life. I'm 63 years old, and so it's proof that anyone can take the course despite ages or physical abilities. And so our trip through Europe really is trying to connect people to the concept of empowerment self-defense, let them know what programs are available for them to access for the people that they serve, whether that be a domestic violence shelter or people working in anti-trafficking. They can always connect with what we do in terms of empowerment self-defense.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's all about the partnerships, expanding the net, making sure that the communities that are falling through the cracks are being held, and saying, we're here to hold you. I would like to hear just a bit more, share with our listeners a bit more of the overview from how empowerment self-defense, when it started and where it's going. How has it evolved? How has the ecosystem evolved for you? And is it hopeful?
Yes, of course. I'm relatively new to the industry. I work with people who have been doing this for over 30 years, so I have a perspective of what the history has been. There's a long history of people teaching empowerment self-defense within their dojos and their martial arts organizations, the National Women's Martial Arts Federation. So there are groups that have supported ESD throughout the years. What has happened over the last 3 years with investment, the investment has created a number of new opportunities for instructors to be trained. So that is one of the main movements, is that there are hundreds of more ESD instructors in all varieties of their strategies throughout the world, whether that be in Brazil or Africa or Chile or Europe. There's just many more people doing it. That's one observation. I think that with Impact Personal Safety, we've evolved as well. And so, our core program that has been running since 1984 is a 16-hour self-defense program that is very comprehensive, that teaches you how to deal with violence with verbal strategies and physical strategies. And it's a scientific process that has been informed by research. It's been informed by neurologists. It's informed by law enforcement. And so it's very comprehensive in that way and has made its adjustments throughout the years. We have kind of a continuum of services. It starts out with a basic introduction. So let's imagine that a corporation just kind of wants to find out what this is. So one of our instructors would go and
Mm-hmm.
provide a 60 to 90-minute introduction and maybe show a few strategies around saying no and setting boundaries verbally. Then we have a 3 to 4 hour workshop program that's very popular. And that provides really the first step of the 16-hour basics program, which is our flagship. And that 3 to 4 hour workshop usually deals with the intuition, awareness, boundary setting, de-escalation, the verbal strategies. And then there are some basic physical strategies, which would include a padded instructor, which makes us unique. So the padded instructor would be confronting one of our students. The student learns how to try to set the boundaries. If the padded instructor moves in, then it's a heel palm to the chin. And then, of course, our go-to move, which is a strong knee to the groin. That usually takes care of the situation. However, if the padded assailant comes back, then it's usually another knee to the groin or knee to the head. And then the student will assess the situation, make sure it's safe, make sure the person is not going to bother them anymore, and then they move on and exit and escape. Now, we have advanced courses as well. So in advanced courses, you're really using all of the scenarios that we've put in place in the basics course. But in advanced courses, we may have someone that is a victim of kidnapping scenario, and they may be blindfolded, or they may be sleeping in bed and be attacked. And so it's just an advanced scenario that also includes what we call stickier fights. A sticky fight is a really sticky fight where the padded assailant is not making it easy for you to get away. So as you move through the system, the fights get stickier. And then all of this culminates in a course called, defense against an armed assailant, defense against someone with a weapon. And so how do you defend yourself if someone comes at you with a knife, or if someone sneaks up behind you and holds a knife to your throat? What do you do in that scenario? What do you do in a scenario where someone has a gun? We also include in all of these courses bystander intervention. And so if you come onto a situation where someone's being attacked or threatened, how do you deal with that?
Wow,
so
that's very important.
It's really a range of programs. Sometimes people will take the basics course and then come back in 3 years and take it again as a refresher. But we know that if you take our basics course, you're going to be able to protect yourself. And almost everyone who takes the basics course never has to fight because they use their verbal skills and their intuition and awareness to avoid the violence in the first place.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I'm just thinking that just the concept of the boundary setting, and we talk about it in every show. And also obviously impact. I've spoken about impact with Lisa Gaeta, Sheila Watson. I mean, we just an opportunity to really say, no, I'm living in a different world. I'm not going to let the violence come into my life. I'm going to set my space around me. I'm going to create my safe space. So powerful. Probably with the stickier situations. I remember when I took impact just over a year ago, it was so hard to get out of that and get away from that padded instructor. The adrenaline that rushed through me to really get out of the situation. It's incredible. It's so important. And life-changing. Tell us about your experience for the Association of ESD Professionals. Yes. You're serving many types of people as well. You're serving the professionals, the people that want to go further and to teach ESD around the world. So you have every month you have a show called Office Hours with Tom Rose. When did it start? What's the purpose of it? Who do you speak to?
So, and it's a broad audience. And of course, I do a lot of presenting about impact and empowerment self-defense. I'm not the instructor like Lisa Gaeta and Sheila Watson. They're the experts. But it's good to give a wide view of what is offered. In terms of office hours and work with the association, I helped Samantha Waterman start the association way back in 2021, I believe. It was. Our first office hours started in April of that year. And so I think we're on our 10th or 11th episode right now. But the main point of office hours is just like office hours at a university. And I'm a professor and people just have questions. That's really have been our agenda. We always have a topic and we always invite guests. And of course, we're inviting guests that are experienced and have been successful doing business development. This is about developing the business. And so there's been topics around marketing strategies, around social media strategies, how to get financing, whether you want to be a nonprofit or a for-profit. We also had a lengthy program on the 3 levels of instructors. You have people who do this as a hobby, people that do this as a gig, and then people that do this as a career. And so we're really trying to move more people into the gig and careers levels, because it's very difficult to maintain your skills if it's just a hobby. And this is very intense instruction. And so if you're only going to teach once or twice a year, it's very hard to keep up with your skills. And there are some people that do this within their martial arts practice, and that's wonderful. And that's where more maybe becomes a hobby for them. But we're really wanting to, make this a both an economic development and employment situation for people, so they can generate this as a great substantial gig on top of their other job, or make it into a career where you're doing this full time. So the point of office hours is to whatever topics arise that we can address that can help people start their business. And an example of that is when Empowerment Self-Defense Global does its training in Rwanda, for example, for a number of people from Africa, meet with a school, for example, and get the scheduling done. And they get started, and some of them are already teaching 200 or 300 hours. Then there are others that isn't their natural, it's just not their natural personality. And so we want to support them in terms of, what do you do after you've trained your family and friends? And you're wanting to get your level 1 certification, which means you may have 20 more hours to teach. So how do you go about organizing a class, promoting the class? If you're going to charge, what is a fair rate? How do you then operate from a standpoint of enrollments? Do you have software to do that, or is it just on in your notebook, or is it a spreadsheet? And then, what is a fair price to rent space if you're looking for space to hold it? How do you promote it? And then what kind of infrastructure do you need? If you are an entity, then of course we have all of our business requirements around taxes and registration in countries and those things. The association from the very beginning has established a number of resources in addition to the show. There's a resource library on how to get things started. There's information about what is the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit company. And so I would urge people to access the association, to join, become a member, and not just look at the certification process, which is very valuable. And so there's a number of valuable things about the association. And you're certainly generating a collegial atmosphere, but then there are just good resources in terms of reading and educating yourself all in one place.
That's amazing. It's so vital for the progress of empowerment self-defense that this ecosystem is putting on a professional hat. It's taking individuals and turning their passion for ESD into a profitable entity. What do most people struggle with the most?
I think most people struggle with, or they're challenged by, the transitioning from the exhilarating experience of training and the transformation that you experience on your own as a person, whether that's Empowerment Self-Defense Global Level 1 training or whether that's an impact training. And so then the next step, taking that next step is the challenge. And the challenge then back to the gig and the career piece is, making that decision to go for it. Okay, so I want to become a level 1 certified instructor and make this a business for myself. Or I want to go through the 6 or 7 doses of training I will need to become an impact instructor. And that may take 1 or 2 years to do. And so one challenge is making the commitment, right? Stepping into the void and saying, I'm going to do this. Then after that, it's the how. And not everyone, certainly you can imagine people that are training students in Douala, Cameroon, for example. And then the next thing they know, they're training someone in the other part of the country where there isn't any infrastructure whatsoever. Or in Brazil, you might be training someone in Sao Paulo or Rio. And the next thing you know, you're out in the mountains in Teresópolis trying to work with an entirely different culture coming from a different baseline, or people that are indigenous people who are experiencing a whole nother level of violence. So I think the one challenge is deciding what you want to do. And the ecosystem that's been created has been very instrumental in helping people decide that. And then once you've decided that you want to commit, then it helps you decide which, populations do you want to work with? How do I go about this? And what is the future then?
So it's just a question that comes to mind right now off the top of what you're saying is the fact that the passion is to prevent violence around the world. And we want to make that ESD available to everyone around the world and scale up. Yet we still have to establish a target audience, a target market. We still have to crunch the numbers and make it, to make it happen. And that's it's ever challenging. And so it's an amazing thing that you're doing what you're doing, because it takes a huge edge off. We're not alone. I mean, it's one thing to make an impact on your own community, but when you're holding something that's so enlightening, something that's so can heal the world. We want to make a change around the world. It's so intimidating to say, "Oh, I'll take Brazil. I'm taking Europe." Yes. And we need to establish the community and the infrastructure for that, so that the professionals can lean on one another. And you spoke.
I can give you an example.
Yes,
An example is, just embassies, for example, or an organization like the Peace Corps in the U.S. or Doctors Without Borders. They can really, really use our services. Collectively, as a group of ESD instructors or impact instructors or teams, collectively, we should be able to band together, work out our infrastructure and our agreements as colleagues, and then train all of those groups around the world wherever they may be. And so that is the vision in terms of scaling, is that we have enough instructors to do that.
Wow. So what are the trends that you see so far?
Well, I see a tremendous increase in the number of available instructors around the world. The investment made by ESD Global, Yudisa Dickman, has really made a difference. And we're talking hundreds of people, up to 500 new instructors around the world.
Wow.
So when I see that in my role, that's capital. Those are assets and capital from my standpoint. If I can help develop a system to deploy these instructors in places where it's most needed, and at the same time get it funded and financed by organizations that have a similar mission, then we're making progress. So that is one certain trend. I think another trend is the social media part of our ecosystem, which includes all of the work done by, Impact SoCal, Impact Global, Impact Colorado, El Halev, ESD Global, and now, of course, MyPwr has come online, and it's certainly going to be integral in this kind of new world that we are in from a marketing and promotion standpoint. And so, believe it or not, before the internet, And before social media, we still did branding and we did marketing and promotions and
Mm-hmm.
contracting. It was just done in a different way. And so now with the availability to do a Zoom call with a colleague in Kenya or, in the Gambia
Mm-hmm.
or in Costa Rica, it's certainly easier to bind everyone together and collectively move. And so I think that may be the biggest trend is there's a movement now. It's
Right.
just not ESD instructors training, which was always wonderful, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
needs to be commended by that. But now there's a movement that can be identified and that is truly worldwide. I mean, my next trip is going to Astana, Kazakhstan. And so if you
Wow.
think, that's 13 time zones from where I live in Denver, Colorado. And so we are really
Wow.
reaching, that's almost like time travel. And so, I leave at 4 or 5 a.m. and I get home at 4 p.m. on the same day. That's kind of like time travel. And I'm an old
Yes.
sci-fi buff anyway. So I think that's pretty cool, except when you get off the plane and you're so exhausted. That's very much of a demonstration to the reach when you're thinking of
Mhm.
Santiago, Chile, and Astana, Kazakhstan, and Rwanda, and the Philippines and Thailand. Now we're
Mhm.
truly, truly operating throughout the world and with hundreds of people that are on the bus.
Amazing. It's a huge success. I bless that it should continue, that this trend should go upward and just take off as the trainings go on and there are more teachers available. And as the app is established and it's ESC is in the palms of people worldwide, I think that we truly can make the world a safer place, um, especially for, the underprivileged, especially for people that have just been barraged with a constant feeling of insecurity, and that they can take back their power slowly, slowly. And there are people that want to see them succeed, and we want to see each other succeed. When we first met, you discussed this sweet spot. Could you go into that for us?
Sure. So there's a business development sweet spot to this. And of course, as we reference the hobby, gig, and career, people that are wanting to make this a career, of course, have to make an income to make this
Mm.
happen. And so there's three key components of this sweet spot that I've developed. One is that you have to have enough instructors trained to teach enough courses out in the
Right.
community to generate enough revenues to then support the administration and the infrastructure that is empowered and responsible for scheduling the courses and finding a space for them and making sure there's insurance for liability and a way to collect the funding. And so once you hit that sweet spot, then you're generating either, a small profit. Um, then you go from there. And so, imagine that you're in Colorado, for example, and we're teaching in Denver. We have put a strong initiative on recruiting more instructors. So now we have capacity of instructors. Then we're able to expand the number of courses that we offer beyond 4 or 5 per year to 2 or 3 per month.
Mm-hmm.
That
Amazing.
supports then because you have more instructors and you're able to do more classes, then you're generating enough revenue. So I have my program coordinator and program director that are now working full-time positions. And
Mm-hmm.
so once you have that in place, as we now do in Los Angeles as well, then you have someone to do outreach, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
then when you have someone to do outreach, then you're meeting with more schools or more special populations or people in the LGBTQ community. And from there, you're able to generate additional contracts and additional enrollments in your programs. So once you hit that sweet spot, there may be a few months when you're above the sweet spot a little and below the sweet spot a little. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, by having that instructor capacity that is able to support your infrastructure, you will
Mm-hmm.
be able to have a profitable business. And of course, you have to pay attention and you have to use the tools available. But I see that as the the ecosystem is there, the office hours is there, your show is there, MyPwr is coming online. And so all of these are contributing to this ecosystem, including the association, that is fostering an environment to make it happen on a business level. So this just isn't an economic struggle and a volunteer operation. It's a full-fledged business.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And as I mentioned before, the MyPwr app has just launched the beta with 21 lessons, making empowerment self-defense available around the world. And, you talk about the movement. I want to know, in your eyes, how does MyPwr contribute to the movement of preventing violence around the world and what you do?
I think the access to the 21 lessons is, in and by itself, a huge accomplishment and a value, because there are people that are not going to be able to access an in-person program or even an online program that is charging for services in countries where the economic circumstances are challenging. And so I think that having MyPwr in the 21 lessons is a service by itself. But building on that, after you've engaged the lessons, then MyPwr leads you to understand that there's an ecosystem here and there's a movement here. Now, some people that utilize the app as it develops will use it for safety reasons, for prevention of violence alone. They're not interested in the rest of the movement, or they may be just partially interested in that. There are others, though, that will be attracted to what is the next step. And of course, the next step is additional online training, or then an in-person course of empowerment self-defense course or an impact course. Then usually, when we look at a cohort of 15 people training to be instructors or who engage empowerment class their first time, at least 3 or 4 will then want to join the movement and become instructors. It's just common. It's happened over and over and over and over. And so I think that there's levels of contribution that the app is making. It's developing and teaching safety. It's also promoting an ecosystem. And then it connects people with resources where they can expand their experience. And, I look at my job, I'm a connector. I'm not an instructor. I can connect you to the programs. I can connect the country to other programs, and I connect professionals to get involved. A perfect example is we met a colleague in Madrid who is in charge of the Red Cross trafficking program for the region. And from the very moment we met her, we could tell she was a perfect fit. And, but if we could have met and explained to what we did, but if we didn't have a connection to another program or a vision of how this might work in partnership or collaboration with an organization, then it might not go anywhere from there. And so to have a movement, you have to do more than just take a class. It's part of the movement, but if you really want to be part of the movement, then you get out there and you engage people and you engage organizations. And so I think that's where MyPwr provides both some energy and impetus to get started, along with the safety lessons. And then it also empowers you and lets you realize that there's a much bigger movement out there that you can join if you wish.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. It's true. We're so lucky to have developed the app and be part. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk about it. Before we end off, I'd just love to know from you, Tom Rose, if there's anything else that you'd like to share with the Change the Culture podcast listeners, and how can people reach out?
Well, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk about this and share. My colleagues are probably tired of hearing the same story, but I'm a repetitive person, and I think that putting it out there frequently to everyone is what's going to be effective. You can reach me a variety of ways. The best one is my email at tom@impactglobal.net. is one way to reach me. Certainly, I use WhatsApp all the time, and my number is 720-775-9341, and that is +1 US based phone. But I'm happy to WhatsApp and stay connected, and it's thrilling for me to be able to connect with people all over the world and throughout the time zones in one single day. It's just gives me makes my hair tingle.
I feel the same way. Such a privilege. It's such a privilege.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you again, Tom Rose, for being on the show. We would love to hear from our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast. So pop over to the Change the Culture Facebook group and share your thoughts, questions, and success stories with us. You can catch up on the last season of Change the Culture by visiting our website, mypwr.co.il/podcasts, or you can catch us on Spotify and YouTube. We want you to be part of the conversation and part of the solution. So stay tuned for the next Change the Culture podcast. We will hear from more professionals in the field of ESD around the world. Thank you to Alicia Levy, the editor of this podcast, and to MyPwr for making it happen. All the best, Tom. Wonderful, wonderful meeting you. Wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you. I'm privileged to be here. Thanks.